Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
The Pirate King's Family by Straw Hatter 1. A series of one-shots following the lives of Monkey D. Luffy, Boa Hancock, and their daughter, Monkey D. Lucy. Adios.
Lucy's breath was ragged, her heart pounding in her chest as she sprinted through the twisting, dark corridors of the marine ship. The metallic walls were cold and unyielding, echoing her frantic steps and the distant shouts that seemed to chase her through the labyrinthine interior. Lucy was desperately trying to reach the holding area where her father was chained. The map of the ship was etched into her mind, a route she had memorized with her uncle Sabo, but now, the ship was a maze of horrors, each corridor filled with the cries of battle and the sharp clang of steel. As she rounded a corner, her heart leapt into her throat. The door to the holding cells was just ahead, ominously ajar, a sliver of dim light spilling into the dark hallway. With a burst of speed fueled by fear and desperation, Lucy pushed through the door, her eyes scanning the room for her father. The sight that met her eyes was a cruel twist of fate. Not only was her father there, chained in sea prism stone that dulled his vibrant spirit, but her mother was beside him, similarly bound and subdued. Both were silent, their heads bowed in defeat. She rushed to their side, her hands shaking as she reached for the locks on their chains, her fingers clumsy with panic. As she touched the cold, hard sea prism stone, the dream shifted, morphing into an even more terrifying scene. Suddenly, she was no longer on the ship. She was standing in a vast, open execution ground. Her parents were now kneeling, still chained, on a raised platform in front of a jeering crowd. Above them, the executioners' spears glinted ominously in the harsh light of the noon sun. Lucy's breath hitched in her throat as she felt a powerful grip on her neck, lifting her off her feet. She struggled, kicking and reaching for the hand that held her, her eyes wide with terror. Turning her head, she saw Admiral Akainu, his face twisted in a cruel smile. "So, the Pirate King's daughter thinks she can save her parents," Akainu taunted, his voice a menacing growl. "You'll fail, just like your father did to save his brother, then you're next." Lucy's heart pounded in her ears as she struggled against Akainu's iron grip. Below her, her parents' eyes met hers, filled with a mixture of fear and defiance. Her mother's eyes, usually so calm and commanding, were now brimming with tears, while her father's expression was one of rage and helplessness. The crowd's roar reached a fever pitch as the executioners raised their spears. Lucy screamed, a desperate, raw sound that tore from her throat as she fought to free herself, to save her parents. As the spears descended, the dream fractured, shattering around her like glass. Lucy bolted upright in her bed, a scream still lingering on her lips, her body slick with cold sweat. The remnants of the dream clung to her. The images of her parents in chains, the feel of Akainu's grip still vivid and terrifying. In the quiet of her room, Zephyra, her snake companion, sensed her distress and slithered up, coiling protectively around her, her scales cool and reassuring against Lucy's skin. Patches, her loyal dog, whined softly and jumped onto the bed, curling up in her lap, her warm body a comforting weight. Trembling, Lucy wrapped her arms around Patches, burying her face in her fur, trying to steady her breathing. Zephyra's gentle pressure around her reminded her that she was safe, that the nightmare was just that. A nightmare. The fear lingered, the images from her dream casting a shadow over the moonlight creeping through her window. Silently, she slipped out of her bed, the cool floor of her bedroom a sharp contrast to the lingering warmth of her sheets. The palace was silent at this hour. The only sounds the distant rustle of the jungle and the soft, rhythmic thud of her own footsteps as she made her way through the dimly lit corridors to her parents' room. The weight of her isolation pressed down on her. Over the past 2 weeks, she had consciously distanced herself from everyone, grappling internally with her fears and nightmares. She had reasoned that with her father's recovery and her mother's constant worry, adding her own troubles to the mix would only burden them further. However, this self-imposed solitude had only deepened the shadows in her mind, the nightmare echoing louder in the silence she surrounded herself with. Standing outside her parents' door, Lucy's hand hovered hesitantly. She was torn between the desire to be strong and independent, almost an adult now, and the almost visceral need for the comfort and assurance that only her parents could provide. She took a deep, steadying breath, her heart aching with the conflict. The thought of waking them, of disturbing their much-needed rest, weighed heavily on her, but the need to see them, to confirm their safety with her own eyes, was overwhelming. It was then she heard a soft voice, barely louder than a whisper. "Lucy?" Startled, Lucy jumped, her eyes snapping to the figure of her mother emerging from the shadows of the hallway. Hancock, holding a small vial of medicine in one hand, regarded her daughter with a perceptive gaze. The moonlight streamed through the window behind her, casting a gentle glow that softened the lines of worry on her face. "Mom, I was just," Lucy stammered, quickly wiping away the last trace of her tears, hoping the dim light hid her red eyes. Hancock stepped closer, her expression softening. "You don't have to hide your tears from me, my love," she said gently, reaching out to brush a loose strand of hair from Lucy's face. "Another nightmare?" Lucy nodded, unable to meet her mother's eyes, feeling both relieved and embarrassed to be caught in such a vulnerable moment. "Yeah, I don't want to disturb you. I thought that you were still asleep. I'll just head back to my room." Hancock smiled reassuringly and shook her head. "I was already up, getting more medicine for your father," she stated, lifting the small vial of medicine. "Although I believe he may have finally fallen asleep." Her voice held a calm certainty that always seemed to ease Lucy's fears. "Come here," she said, opening her arms. Without hesitation, Lucy stepped into the embrace, her mother's presence enveloping her in a warmth that felt like a balm to her frazzled nerves. Hancock's hold was gentle, grounding and real in a way nothing else had been since Lucy's nightmares began to haunt her nights. Lucy's voice was muffled against her mother's shoulder as she spoke. "I'm sorry, Mom. I don't want to be a burden, especially with everything that's already on your mind." Hancock tightened her embrace, her hand soothingly stroking Lucy's back. "Lucy, listen to me," she began, her tone firm yet filled with compassion. "You are never a burden. Your fears, your pain, they matter to me, to us. Sharing them doesn't make you a burden, it makes you loved." In the safety of her mother's arms, something inside Lucy began to unravel. The walls she had built around her emotions since the ordeal began to crumble, and the tears she had fought so hard to hold back now flowed freely. With each sob, all of her held-back fear and pent-up anxiety poured out, her mother's steady presence a silent reassurance that it was okay to let go. Hancock continued to hold her, whispering soothing words. "Let it out, my love. I'm here. I've got you." Minutes later, as Lucy's tears began to subside, her body still trembling from the emotional release, Hancock gently lifted her daughter's chin, encouraging her to meet her gaze. "It's okay to need us, Lucy. It's okay to seek comfort. We're your parents, that's what we're here for. You're not alone in this." Lucy managed a small, grateful smile through her tears, the weight on her chest feeling lighter than it had in weeks. "Thank you, Mom. I've been so scared. Scared of losing Dad, of being alone, of not being strong enough." Hancock nodded understandingly, her eyes reflecting both pride and empathy. "You're strong, Lucy. Stronger than you know, but being strong doesn't mean you have to handle everything alone. Being strong also lean on others." Lucy took a deep breath, absorbing her mother's words, feeling the truth in them resonate within her. "I'll try to remember that," she whispered. "Good," Hancock replied, giving her a reassuring squeeze. "And remember, whatever happens, we face it together as a family. We love you, more than anything, and there's nothing that could ever change that." After a few silent moments between mother and daughter, Hancock suggested softly, "You can stay with us tonight. I'll watch over you and your father while you both rest, all right?" Lucy managed another small smile, nodding her agreement. "I'd like that," she admitted as she leaned her head against her mother's shoulder once more. "But aren't you tired? You don't need to stay up just for me." Hancock pressed a gentle kiss to the top of Lucy's head. "I will be all right, I promise. Just being with you both gives me peace that sleep alone doesn't bring." The room was filled with a quiet, expectant silence as they settled on the bed, Luffy's soft breathing the only sound echoing through the stillness. Hancock, now sitting between her daughter and her husband, felt the tension once again emanating from Lucy, who leaned against her more heavily than usual. Hancock turned her attention fully towards Lucy, her expression both gentle and concerned. Do you want to talk about what you're dreaming? She ventured softly, giving Lucy the space to open up on her own terms. There was a careful balance in her voice, an invitation without pressure. Lucy hesitated, biting her lip as she contemplated her mother's question. She had kept the contents of her nightmares to herself, partly out of fear that speaking them aloud would make them all too real, and partly because she didn't want to add to her parents' worries. However, the weight of keeping her fears contained had taken its toll. It's always the same, Lucy finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. The corridors of that marine ship, the sounds of chains, and him. Her voice faltered as she mentioned Akainu, the embodiment of her terror. He's always there, and I can't escape. It feels so real, Mom. Hancock's heart clenched at the mention of Akainu. The pain and fear in Lucy's voice brought back her own memories of terror. Memories she had hoped her daughter would never have to endure. I'm so sorry, Lucy, Hancock murmured as she pulled Lucy closer, her hold a shield against the lingering shadows of the past. It must be terrifying to relive that moment. Lucy nodded, tears once again brimming in her eyes as she allowed herself to be held. It's not just the fear, she confessed, the words tumbling out in a rush. It's feeling helpless. Like I did then. I know it's just a nightmare, but it feels so real. My love, you have gone through such an ordeal. Your mind is trying to fully process everything that has happened. No one expects you to walk away from such a fight perfectly fine, Hancock explained softly, her words meant to comfort but also to enlighten. Lucy sniffled, wiping away a stray tear as she absorbed her mother's words. I know. I just hate feeling so scared, she said, a mix of frustration and relief coloring her tone as the burden of her nightmares was shared. I mean, I've got the strongest parents in the world, and here I am cowering and crying like a child. Hancock's voice was soothing as she responded, Lucy, you are strong for so many reasons, not because you never feel scared, but because you face it. Just opening up to me about this shows how strong you are, and crying, it doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. Lucy looked up, meeting her mother's eyes, finding solace in the understanding she saw there. Thank you, Mom. It helps, hearing that from you, she said, a tentative smile breaking through her earlier apprehension. Hancock smiled back, her own fears momentarily relieved by her daughter's resilience. Your father and I, and everyone who cares for you, we're all here for you, always, she added warmly. The silence that followed was comfortable, filled with an unspoken understanding and a mutual appreciation of their togetherness. Hancock continued to hold Lucy as her body began to relax fully against her mother's side. Gradually, the tension that had kept Lucy's muscles tight during their conversation eased, and her eyes fluttered shut, the nightmares that had plagued her retreating into the shadows at the comforting reality of her mother's presence. Hancock felt Lucy's weight settle more heavily against her as the young woman drifted into sleep. She adjusted slightly on the bed, ensuring that Lucy was comfortable, her arms securely wrapped around her daughter, providing a physical reminder that she was not alone. The warmth of Lucy's body against hers and the peaceful expression that settled over Lucy's features gave Hancock a deep sense of relief. Hancock remained awake, her vigilant gaze shifting between Lucy and Luffy, who was also sleeping soundly. She allowed herself a moment to appreciate the quiet that enveloped the room, a rare, tranquil pause in their often tumultuous lives. It was these moments, simple, quiet, and intimate, that she cherished the most, where the roles of Pirate Empress and Pirate King faded into the background, leaving just a mother and a father watching over their child. Despite her own fatigue, Hancock chose to stay awake, basking in the peace that had settled over her family. She knew there would be time later for sleep, for her, but now she was exactly where she needed to be. Every so often, she would gently stroke Lucy's hair or adjust the blanket over them, each gesture a silent promise of protection and love. Outside, the first light of day began to paint the sky in a bright shade of blue and gold. Luffy slowly awoke to pain shooting through him as he tried to turn over in his sleep. His eyes adjusted to the dim light of the early morning, settling on the tender scene beside him. Hancock cradled Lucy, who had found comfort in her mother's embrace and drifted into a peaceful slumber. Despite the lingering ache in his ribs, Luffy attempted to sit up, wanting to join the quiet vigil. Hancock noticed his movement and instinctively reached out to ease him back, her eyes filled with concern. However, Luffy shook his head gently, signaling her not to worry or wake Lucy. With careful movements, Guided by his enduring will, he managed to prop himself up against the pillows and headboard, wincing slightly but masking the pain with a reassuring smile. "Is she okay?" Luffy whispered, his voice low, not wanting to disturb the serene moment. Hancock nodded, her eyes softening. "She had another nightmare," she explained quietly. "But we talked. She's starting to open up about her feelings. About everything that's happened." Luffy's expression grew thoughtful, his gaze lingering on Lucy's relaxed features. He knew the weight of the nightmares that haunted both his daughter and him. The quiet that followed was filled with an unspoken understanding of the struggles they had each faced. After a moment, Luffy spoke again, his voice steady despite the pain that lingered in his body. "Hancock, I've been thinking a lot lately," he began, his eyes meeting hers with a seriousness that underscored his words. "I'm going to take some time off from sailing." Hancock's eyes widened slightly, surprise mingling with a flicker of hope. "I want to make sure that no one will try to do anything against us or Amazon Lily. I know my friends helped with rescuing me, and I wonder if they would be willing to do one more favor for us by anchoring offshore to keep watch. Just in case," Luffy continued, his mind mapping out precautions. Hancock listened intently, her heart swelling with a mix of admiration and relief. Luffy's willingness to pause his adventures for their safety and to be with them was more than she had allowed herself to hope for. "And," Luffy added, a warm smile spreading across his face, "I want to spend this time with you and Lucy. I'll tell Zoro to inform the crew." The joy in Hancock's heart was almost too much to see would mean the world to us. "To have you here, truly here, it's all we could ask for." Luffy reached out, taking Hancock's hand in his, and gave it a gentle squeeze. "I missed you both so much," he admitted, his voice carrying the weight of his travels and the battles he had endured. "It's time I made up for some of that lost time." Hancock leaned closer, resting her head against Luffy's shoulder, her eyes closing in contentment. The decision to stay, to protect, and to be present was a gift that would mend many of the fissures that time and distance had created in their family. Lucy, still nestled in her mother's arms, stirred slightly but remained asleep, her breathing even and calm. The presence of her parents, strong and united beside her, wove a palpable sense of security around her. Later that day, Luffy carefully navigated the pathways of Amazon Lily, his movements measured but determined as he made his way to the garden to spend time with Hancock. The vibrant life of the island buzzed around him, a stark contrast to the quiet seriousness of his recent conversations. Despite the lingering pain, the fresh air and gentle sun were invigorating, reinforcing his decision to spend the coming months with his family. Meanwhile, Lucy and Olivia strolled along one of the island's scenic routes, lined with lush greenery and exotic flowers that were native to Amazon Lily. The girls' conversation drifted from light-hearted banter to more serious topics, reflecting the depth of their friendship and the shared experiences that had bonded them. Lucy, while enjoying the distraction, couldn't help but glance back towards her home occasionally, her concern for her father never far from her thoughts. Olivia noticed her friend's distracted gaze and gave her a reassuring smile. "Uncle Luffy is strong, Lucy. He'll be just fine. Plus, you said earlier that he'll be taking a break here, right?" Lucy nodded, appreciating Olivia's support. "Yeah. It's just weird seeing him like this. You know? I'm used to him always being the invincible king of the pirates." "I get that. Don't forget, you're looking at the daughter of the world's greatest swordsman," Olivia replied, her voice filled with empathy. "So, I understand it's tough seeing your dad like that. But at least now he's here with you without the chaos of enemies." Lucy kicked a small stone along the path, watching it skitter into the underbrush. "It's just, all these years, I've heard stories of his adventures, his battles. I've seen him leave and return, each time stronger. This time felt different, seeing him hurt, knowing he was in pain. I feel like he doesn't want to be here. I mean, he's always been eager to go back to sea. Had none of this happened, he would still be out there. All of you would be." She trailed off as she gestured to the direction of the open sea. Olivia reached out, placing a gentle hand on Lucy's shoulder. "All of this just shows how much he loves you and your mom. Taking time to heal and be with his family is important." Lucy smiled slightly, the warmth in Olivia's words soothing some of her worries. "I guess you're right. It's just a different kind of strength, isn't it? Being strong enough to step back and heal." "Exactly," Olivia nodded. "And it's not like he's stepping away forever. It's just a pause. a well-deserved one. Plus, you get to have him around for your birthday. We can make sure it's super special." The mention of her upcoming birthday sparked a glint of excitement in Lucy's eyes as she laughed a little. "I think you've been hanging out with Uncle Frankie too much," she replied, hinting at Olivia's use of the word super. Laughing, Olivia linked her arm with Lucy's as they rounded a bend in the path. "You would be surprised how many times he says the word super in a day." Lucy's laughter joined Olivia's, the sound carrying light and easy through the air. As they continued to chat and plan, the weight on Lucy's heart felt a little lighter. With each step and each shared laugh, she was reminded of the strength of her bonds, both with her family and her friends. No matter the changes or challenges, these connections anchored her, a constant reminder that whatever the future held, she wouldn't face it alone. Back at the palace, in a secluded part of the gardens, Hancock, Luffy, Robin, and Zoro gathered for a more in-depth discussion. The gardens provided a serene backdrop, the sound of rustling leaves and distant waves creating a calming atmosphere. Luffy leaned back against a garden bench, wincing slightly as he adjusted his position. Hancock sat beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm, ready to offer support if needed, while he kept his hand securely on her thigh as if grounding himself that he is truly here and by her side. Across from them, Robin and Zoro contributed to the discussion, their closeness evident. Zoro, always the protective husband, had his arm wrapped gently around Robin's waist, anchoring her to his side. His posture was relaxed but his gaze remained sharp and focused. "I've been thinking a lot about what happened," Luffy spoke up, his tone serious. "Taking some time off isn't just for me to heal. It's about making sure you all are safe. Akainu, he won't stop, and I don't want to worry my family again." Zoro nodded, his expression grave. "We can handle things on the ship for a while. We could always take a break ourselves, if the Marines' search isn't intense. We could always split up, that way we're all harder to find and then meet back here when you're ready." Robin added, "Or we could all take a break here, if both you and Hancock are alright with that. I understand that you've already bent the rules many times for us to be on Amazon Lily, however, if you and your people are willing, we could help strengthen Amazon Lily's defenses. I believe Frankie and Usopp would be more than willing to contribute." Hancock, squeezing Luffy's arm gently, voiced her approval. "I think it's a perfect plan. Having all of you here, for all of us on Amazon Lily, it changes everything. We'll all feel a lot safer." Luffy smiled, his usual easygoing nature surfacing as he looked at his friends and family. "Thanks, guys. I know it's a big change, but I'm looking forward to just being Luffy for a bit. You know, just Lucy's dad and Hancock's husband. We'll tell everyone after Lucy's party tomorrow." "I think it's going to be great for all of us," Robin remarked, her voice carrying a note of relief. "This island could use a little more chaos of the Straw Hat variety, and it'll be a nice change to have everyone together without the constant threat of the sea." Hancock smiled at the thought. "I must admit, I'm looking forward to seeing how the island changes with everyone here. It'll be good for them to interact more with our extended family." Zoro shifted slightly, his gaze softening as he looked at Robin. "And it'll give me a chance to actually spend some time with you without having to worry about what's lurking around the next corner," he said, his voice lowering so only she could hear. His words carried a warmth that was usually shielded by his stoic demeanor. Robin smiled up at him, her eyes reflecting the deep affection she felt. "That sounds wonderful," she replied, her hand coming up to gently touch his face. "It's rare for us to have time like this. We should make the most of it." Luffy, watching the exchange between Zoro and Robin, grinned. "See, I told you it was a good idea," he said to Hancock, gently squeezing her leg where his hand still rested. Hancock nodded, her eyes meeting Luffy's with a mix of love and admiration. "Yes, you were right, as always," she said playfully. The discussion continued as they began to outline potential plans for fortifying the island's defenses and integrating the Straw Hat Crew's skills into daily life on Amazon Lily. Ideas were exchanged with enthusiasm, each member of the group bringing their unique perspective to the table. As their conversation drew to a close, Zoro stood, helping Robin to her feet. "Let's go find the kids and let them know the TED to hear about the break." Hancock stood as well, her gaze lingering on Luffy, who was slowly rising with a bit of effort. She reached out, steadying him gently. "Let's go then. We've got a lot to prepare for Lucy's party tomorrow." The first light of dawn cast a gentle glow through the window of Lucy's room as Hancock quietly opened the door. Inside, the peaceful scene of Lucy sleeping soundly with Zephyra and Patches nestled close to her brought a tender smile to Hancock's face. The two animals initially tensed at the sound of the door, their protective instincts kicking in, but upon recognizing Hancock, they relaxed, tails thumping softly against the bedding. Hancock approached the bed quietly, her movements graceful and motherly. She sat gently on the edge next to her daughter, watching Lucy for a moment with a look filled with love. Reaching out, Hancock gently cupped Lucy's cheek, her touch light but filled with affection. The gentle contact made Lucy stir, her eyes fluttering open to the comforting sight of her mother. Hancock leaned down and placed a soft kiss on Lucy's forehead. "Good morning, my love," Hancock whispered, her voice low and sweet. "Happy birthday." Lucy blinked, her sleep-filled eyes focusing on her mother's smiling face. A slow, sleepy smile spread across her face as the realization of the day dawned on her. "Morning, Mom," she murmured sleepily. "Thank you." Hancock's smile widened as she stroked Lucy's hair gently. "Today is all about you, darling. We have a special day planned," she said, her tone conveying both excitement and a secret delight in the surprises they had arranged for Lucy. Lucy sat up, stretching her arms above her head and then wrapping them around Hancock in a warm embrace. "I can't believe I'm 17, she said, a mix of disbelief and excitement in her voice. Zephyra and Patches came closer, nuzzling against Lucy and Hancock, adding to the warmth of the moment. Hancock hugged her daughter back, savoring the closeness. 17 years, and each year, you've brought more joy into our lives than the last, she spoke sincerely, pulling back to look at Lucy with eyes full of pride. Lucy chuckled, a light blush coloring her cheeks at the praise. "I hope I can continue to make you proud, Mom." "You already do, every single day," Hancock assured her, her voice firm with conviction. "Now, get ready. We have a breakfast feast waiting, per your father's request, and then we can start with the birthday festivities." Lucy's eyes lit up at the mention of a feast. "I can't wait. Let's go," she said, her energy suddenly peaking as she threw back the covers and hopped out of bed, motivated by the promise of a day filled with family, friends, and celebration. Lucy quickly dressed in a light, flowing dress that complemented the vibrant surroundings of Amazon Lily. She followed her mother to the dining hall, where the air was filled with the aroma of freshly prepared dishes and the sound of cheerful voices. As they entered, the room burst into a chorus of "Happy Birthday," led by the Straw Hat crew and her aunts, all gathered to celebrate her special day. The dining hall was beautifully decorated with exotic flowers and festive banners, creating a joyful atmosphere. The long table was laden with an array of breakfast delicacies, from tropical fruits to freshly baked pastries, each dish more inviting than the last. Lucy's heart swelled with happiness as she took in the scene. Though the Straw Hats were not related by blood, they were family in every sense that mattered to her. Their presence brought a sense of completeness to her celebration, filling her with warmth and gratitude. Among the well-wishers, Kenji, the spirited 13-year-old Rorinoa boy, darted through the crowd towards Lucy. His steps were eager, a shy smile on his lips. As he reached her, he threw his arms around her in a brave, albeit bashful, hug. "Happy birthday, Lucy," he exclaimed, his cheeks turning a noticeable shade of red as he stepped back, his ears tinged with the same hue. Lucy laughed softly, touched by his gesture, and hugged him back. "Thank you, Kenji, that means a lot." From the sidelines, Olivia watched the exchange with an amused smirk. She leaned towards her mother, whispering, "Oh, I'm definitely going to tease him about this later. He can't even hug her without turning red." Robin gave her daughter a mild look of reprimand. "Sweetheart, be nice. Don't tease him about his little crush," she advised, though her eyes twinkled with amusement. Zoro, who had been observing the interaction with a chuckle, added, "I told you before, like father, like son. He's got a type just like I do." His gaze fondly drifted to Robin, who rolled her eyes at his comment but couldn't hide her affectionate smile. As the breakfast commenced, the room was filled with laughter and lively conversation. Lucy sat between her parents, soaking in the happiness of the moment. Hancock occasionally squeezed Lucy's hand, a silent expression of her love and support. Luffy, though still recovering, was animated as he shared stories and joked with the crew, his spirits buoyed by the family gathering. After the lively breakfast, the crew and other guests dispersed to give the family some privacy. "Let's find a more secluded spot," Hancock said, leading the way. The three of them moved away from the bustling center of the palace to a tranquil corner where the sound of the waves could be faintly heard, mingling with the gentle rustle of leaves. They settled under a large, flowering tree, the ground beneath them blanketed with soft grass and fallen petals. Hancock and Luffy sat close together as Lucy sat across from them. The atmosphere was peaceful, a stark contrast to the earlier noise and celebration. Luffy pulled from his pocket a small, intricately carved box, presenting it to Lucy with a significant look. "We have something for you, Lucy," he said, his voice filled with excitement. Lucy opened the box with curious fingers to find a beautifully crafted log pose inside, its casing adorned with symbols of the sea. Her eyes lit up as she gently traced the engravings, her expression a mix of wonder and anticipation. Luffy smiled at his daughter's reaction. "Your mom and I have been talking, and we know how much you want to sail. How much you need to see the world beyond Amazon Lily," he continued. "So, we decided that when I'm ready to set sail again, you're coming with us. Not just for a visit, but as part of the crew, if that's what you still want." Lucy was momentarily speechless, her eyes darting between the log pose and her parents. "Really?" she managed, her voice barely above a whisper, overwhelmed by the magnitude of their gift and what it represented. "Yes, really," Hancock affirmed, squeezing Lucy's hand gently. "You've grown so much, and you've shown us how strong and capable you are. It's time we supported your dreams the way you've always supported us." Tears welled up in Lucy's eyes as the realization sunk in. She threw her arms around both her parents, hugging them tightly. Thank you both so much," she said, her voice muffled by emotion. "This means everything to me." Under the sunlight filtering through the leaves, the excitement in Lucy's eyes momentarily flickered with hesitation. "But, wait, Mom," she began, her voice filled with uncertainty, "I don't want to leave you alone here. I've always been separated from Dad. I don't want to be separated from you now." Hancock, despite her excitement for Lucy, felt a pang of sorrow at the thought. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears, reflecting her mixed emotions. "It's all right, my love," she said, her voice surprisingly steady, "I'll be fine. Amazon Lily is my responsibility, and I have your aunts and the Kuja warriors. But this is your chance to live the life you've dreamed of." Lucy's resolve wavered as she saw the tears in her mother's eyes. She wrapped her arms tightly around Hancock. "Please don't cry, Mom. Maybe there's a way we can all be together? Could the crews maybe sail together?" she asked hopefully, looking for any ace the burden of parting. Hancock was unsure, the complexities of their duties weighing on her. "I'm not sure, Lucy. Someone needs to stay with Amazon Lily," she said softly, trying to reconcile her duties with her daughter's wishes. Luffy, sensing the mood turning somber, interjected with a gentle smile. "Hey, let's not worry about that today," he said, wanting to keep the day light and joyful for Lucy. "Today is about celebrating. You're ready for this, Lucy. And who knows, maybe there will be times when our paths can sail together," Hancock added, wiping her eyes and smiling through her emotions. Luffy chuckled, the ease of his laughter bringing a semblance of normalcy back to their gathering. "That's right, and I'll be there, making sure you don't get into too much trouble," he teased, winking at his daughter. Lucy laughed, the sound mingling with the rustle of leaves around them, her heart lighter despite the complexities of their situation. "I guess I'd better start getting used to being on the sea then," she said, her voice filled with newfound determination and excitement. The rest of the morning passed with laughter and light-hearted banter, the shadow of future separations momentarily lifted by the joy of the present and the promise of exciting adventures ahead. As they eventually made their way back to join the rest of the crew for the afternoon celebrations, Lucy felt fortified by her parents' support, ready to embrace both the challenges and wonders that lay on the horizon. As the afternoon celebration for Lucy's 17th birthday unfolded, the palace gardens of Amazon Lily transformed into a vibrant scene of joy and camaraderie. Straw Hat crew members mingled with the proud Kuja warriors, each group sharing stories and laughter under the festive decorations that adorned the lush landscape. From a distance, Hancock watched with a mixture of pride and melancholy as Lucy animatedly chatted with friends and family. The young woman's laughter, bright and unguarded, echoed above the festive noise, drawing a soft smile from Hancock, even as her heart wrestled with the impending changes. Noticing the contemplative look on her friend's face, Robin excused herself from a conversation with Nami and Chopper and made her way to Hancock's side. "Hancock," she began gently, her tone laced with concern. "I assume you've told Lucy about being able to sail with us?" Hancock nodded slowly, her gaze still fixed on Lucy. "Yes, we did. She's excited, of course, but it's bittersweet." She let out a quiet sigh, her eyes reflecting the internal struggle of a mother preparing to let her child venture into the wider world. Robin placed a comforting hand on Hancock's shoulder. "She'll be in good hands. Our captain wouldn't let anything happen to his precious daughter." Hancock turned to face Robin, gratitude mingling with apprehension in her eyes. "I know, but part of me wishes I could protect her from everything." Robin offered a sympathetic smile, understanding all too well the fears of a mother. It's the paradox of loving someone, isn't it? Wanting them to soar, yet fearing they might fall. However, Lucy is strong, much like her mother. Hancock managed a smile, her worries momentarily eased by Robin's words. Would you keep an extra eye on her for me? When I'm not there?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. "Of course," Robin replied without hesitation, her voice firm and reassuring. "Lucy will be like my own. You have my word." The conversation paused as they both turned to watch Lucy again, who was now enthusiastically discussing something with Usopp and Kenji, her gestures lively and her eyes sparkling with excitement. Seeing her daughter so vibrant and happy, Hancock felt a surge of confidence in the decision they had made. "She really is ready for this, isn't she?" Hancock mused aloud, more to herself than to Robin. Robin nodded, her eyes warm with affection for both Hancock and Lucy. "She is. She'll make you proud every step of the way." The rest of the afternoon passed with a lightness. As the sun set on Amazon Lily, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, the celebrations for Lucy's 17th birthday wound down, leaving a serene quiet in their wake. In the palace, the sound of excited chatter filled Lucy's room where she and Olivia were settled for the night. Hancock had graciously offered spare rooms to the Straw Hat crew, allowing them to comfortably stay on the island during their planned break. Olivia, thrilled at the opportunity, had eagerly accepted Lucy's invitation to share her room. Inside, Olivia regaled Lucy with tales of life aboard the Thousand Sunny, her descriptions vivid and animated. "And then there's the time your dad accidentally launched himself from the ship using one of Frankie's inventions in the docking station. He ended up on an island we couldn't even see from the deck." Olivia laughed, her eyes sparkling with the memory. Lucy hung on every word, her excitement building as she imagined herself amid the chaos and camaraderie of her father's ship. "I can't wait to see all this for myself," she exclaimed, her voice filled with anticipation. Meanwhile, Hancock paused just outside Lucy's door, her hand raised to knock but hesitating as she overheard the girls' lively discussion. The mixed feelings of joy for her daughter's happiness and a deep-seated worry for her safety battled within her. As she stood there, lost in her thoughts, Patches padded over to the door, her presence alerting Hancock that her hesitation had not gone unnoticed. Sensing that her silent observation might be intrusive, Hancock gently knocked on the door, her voice soft as she called out, "Lucy, may I come in?" "Of course, Mom," Lucy responded, her tone welcoming. Olivia paused her storytelling as Hancock entered, her demeanor warm yet carrying an undercurrent of maternal concern. Hancock stepped into the room, the soft light casting gentle shadows around the cozy space filled with memories and dreams of the sea. Lucy scooted over on the bed, patting the space beside her with an inviting smile. "Sit here, Mom." Gratefully, Hancock took the offered spot, settling beside her daughter. As she leaned back against the plush pillows, Lucy leaned into her, seeking the comforting presence she had always associated with her mother. "I want to make the most of the next few months," Lucy murmured, threading her fingers through her mother's. "I'm going to be a Straw Hat soon, but I'll always be a Kuja too. I want to learn everything I can from you before I go." Hancock's heart swelled with a mixture of pride and lingering concern. She caressed Lucy's hair, soothingly. "This will always be your home, Lucy, and you'll always have me, no matter where you are." Turning to Olivia, who had been quietly observing the tender exchange, Hancock managed a small smile. "Olivia, Would you mind continuing your stories? I think they're exactly what we need right now." Olivia nodded enthusiastically, her face lighting up with the chance to ease the tension. "Of course. Where was I? Oh, right. Your dad and the docking station mishap." She dove back into her tale with renewed vigor, animatedly describing how the crew had scrambled in a comedic frenzy to retrieve Luffy from the remote island. As Olivia's voice filled the room with tales of high seas and hijinks, Hancock found herself drawn into the world her daughter would soon join. The stories, filled with danger but also immense love and loyalty, began to ease her worries. She saw, not just the risks, but the bonds that made the crew a family. Lucy laughed and interjected with questions, her eyes alight with curiosity and excitement. Each story painted a picture of the adventures awaiting her, a life of freedom and discovery she had always dreamed of. Hancock listened, her fears slowly giving way to understanding. This was more than a journey. It was Lucy's destiny. The world out there was vast, and her daughter was ready to meet it with all the courage and joy she had inherited from both her parents. The evening stretched on, the stories weaving at TD Ventures of the Straw Hat crew. As the storytelling wound down, Hancock smiled as she saw the love and determination shining in her daughter's eyes. Hancock kissed both girls goodnight, and made her way back to the room she shared with Luffy. The palace was quiet, the soft sounds of the night creating a tranquil atmosphere as she walked. Entering their room, she changed into her nightwear and slipped into bed beside Luffy, who was already trying to sleep. Luffy, sensing her presence, shifted to make room for her. He noticed her pensive expression and reached out to pull her closer. "You okay?" he murmured, his voice low and filled with concern. Hancock nodded, managing a small smile as she settled into the curve of his arm, resting her head against his chest. The familiar, steady beat of his heart was comforting. "Just thinking about Lucy," she admitted softly. Luffy's hand began to play absently with Hancock's hair, a gesture that had always soothed them both. "She'll be fine, Hancock. I'll look after her just like you have," he reassured her, his tone gentle. Hancock sighed, the weight of her worries easing further under the warmth of Luffy's words. "Promise me, Luffy. Take care of our little girl." "I promise," Luffy replied without hesitation. His fingers continued to twirl strands of her hair as he added, "But don't forget, we've got the next few months together. No Pirate King duties, no big adventures. Just us and Lucy." Luffy's commitment to staying and helping to protect their family, to make up for lost time, was more than she could have asked for. "I just want this to be a time without any worries about what's coming next," she whispered. Luffy nodded, understanding the depth of her feelings. "We'll start our next adventure when we're all ready. Until then, we're just going to enjoy being together. No pressures, no dangers." The reassurance in his voice allowed Hancock to relax completely in his embrace. "Thank you, Luffy," she murmured, "for everything." As they lay there in the quiet of the night, Hancock felt a deep sense of contentment. The future might hold uncertainties, but for now, the presence of her husband by her side and their daughter safe in their home was enough to give her peace. Luffy's steady breathing soon indicated he had drifted off to sleep, but Hancock stayed awake a little longer, savoring the quiet moments. She thought about the days ahead, the simple joys of being together as a family without the shadow of duty hanging over them. Eventually, her own eyes closed, and she fell asleep, enveloped in the security of Luffy's arm around her, the gentle rhythm of his heartbeat a soft lullaby. As they both rested, the night deepened around them, a silent guardian of the precious peace they had found. "I am almost done with part 2, which will focus on the wedding day and a little after, but I keep rewriting and editing it. This request was harder to write than I thought it would be because I didn't want Luffy and Hancock to be too OOC. This has almost 10,000 words, so hopefully the length makes up, somewhat, for the long wait since I've last updated this series." As the moon cast a silvery glow over Amazon Lily, Boa Hancock stood on the balcony of her palace, her gaze lost in the distance. The quiet of the night couldn't soothe the turmoil that churned within her, a mix of longing and frustration that had grown too familiar in recent weeks. Below, the island lay tranquil, but the peaceful scene did little to calm her restless heart. "I just want to be with him, to be married to him," Hancock murmured, her voice a wistful whisper carried away by the sea breeze. From behind her in her room, her sisters, Mari and Sonia, exchanged concerned glances before approaching. "Sister, you must be patient, Sonia said gently, placing a comforting hand on Hancock's shoulder. Luffy is still training, and you know how important that is to him. Mari nodded in agreement, her tone optimistic. And think of the joy that awaits you. This time apart will only make your reunion sweeter. But Hancock's gaze remained distant, her mind replaying every moment spent with Luffy during their trip to and from Marineford. I understand that. But why does it have to be so complicated? I just want to be married to him and even be his girlfriend if that's what it takes. Her words hung in the air, a testament to her confusion about the roles and labels that seemed to define relationships, a concept she still grappled with despite her feelings. At that moment, Elder Nyan joined the trio, having overheard Hancock's confession. Her voice was soft but carried an undercurrent of sternness. Snake Princess, do you even fully grasp what marriage means? One moment you claim to be his fiancée, the next his wife, then his girlfriend. It's not just about titles, it's about understanding the commitments they entail. Hancock turned to face her, frustration evident in her eyes. I know I love him, that should be enough to make him understand. Nyan shook her head as she pinched the bridge of her nose in exasperation. Love is vital, but understanding the depth of what it means to share a life with someone is just as important. You need to learn what marriage really involves. It's more than a title. It's a partnership, a commitment to stand by each other through every challenge and joy. Hancock's expression softened slightly, the weight of Nyan's words settling in her mind. But how am I to learn these things if I am here and here is there? She asked, a genuine trace of helplessness in her voice. Nyan considered this for a moment, her expression more sympathetic. There are many ways to understand the essence of commitment, even from a distance. You can start by really listening to what Luffy says about his dreams, his fears, and his hopes. Communication is the foundation of any strong relationship. Hancock's frustration bubbled up again, her need to be near Luffy clashing with the wisdom being offered. But he's so close, on Rusukaina. I could just be there, with him. We could be learning together. Nyan sighed deeply, understanding Hancock's longing but emphasizing the bigger picture. Remember, Luffy is undergoing important training that requires his full focus. Your presence there might distract him, potentially affecting his progress. Love also means respecting each other's paths, even when those paths require some distance. Hancock began to pace back and forth, wrestling with her emotions. Well, if I must stay here, then I'll make sure he's well fed. I can prepare meals and bring them to him on the island. That will show him how much I care and that I can be a supportive wife. Nyan rubbed the side of her head as she felt the beginnings of a headache. Snake Princess, she interjected, her voice laden with exasperation. Delivering food to him would directly contradict Rayleigh's orders. Luffy is supposed to be isolated, focusing on his training without distractions. Undeterred, Hancock waved her off dismissively, her mind racing with solutions. Then I won't deliver it myself. Mari, Sonia, some of the Kuja could take it. They can make sure he gets it without me being there. Her thoughts quickly shifted to other things she could send along with the food. Maybe some new clothes, the weather does change quite rapidly. Oh, and perhaps some medical supplies, just in case. Watching this unfold, Nyan exchanged a weary look with Mari and Sonia, who both shrugged helplessly. Turning back to Hancock, Nyan tried again to capture her attention. You're not listening. This isn't about sending gifts or proving you can be a good wife. It's about understanding and respecting his need for space and focus. But Hancock seemed barely to hear her, lost once again in her daydreams about their wedding, planning out details for an event that wasn't yet set in stone because Luffy hadn't agreed to marry her. The practicalities of their current realities seemed to slip past her as she mused aloud about color schemes and food for the reception. Nyan watched her before leaning over to whisper to Mari and Sonia. We need to find a way to help her channel her energy into something productive, something that genuinely supports Luffy's journey, not just her fantasies about it. Hancock's thoughts continued to swirl now with images of white dresses and floral arrangements until she suddenly paused and a crease of worry formed between her brows. The reality of Luffy's ambition to become the king of the pirates, a goal vast and all-consuming, began to overshadow her daydreams. What if his grand dream didn't include her? Could she, as Empress, simply abandon her responsibilities to follow him? I wonder if he would allow me to sail with him, she said to herself, but still loud enough that the others could hear. Hearing Hancock's statement, Nyan seized the moment to inject some practical wisdom. You can't just leave with him, Snake Princess. You're the Empress of Amazon Lily, she said bluntly, reminding Hancock of her duties and the reality of her position. Hancock's gaze snapped to Nyan, irritation flashing in her eyes at the blunt reminder. She opened her mouth to retort, the idea of not being able to follow Luffy stinging her deeply. Nyan continued, undeterred by Hancock's glare. Even if it were to come to the point in your supposed relationship where you and Luffy decided to marry, you wouldn't have to abandon your life here. Luffy's dream of being a pirate king doesn't have to exclude his dreams with you. People can have more than one dream, more than one big goal in their lives. Hancock's expression shifted from irritation to contemplation. Nyan's words sank in, slowly dissolving the tight knot of fear in her chest. More than one dream? She echoed, the concept feeling both revolutionary and comforting. Yes, Nyan nodded, softening her tone. Luffy's pursuit of becoming the Pirate King is his dream, but who says he can't also dream of a life with you? If any of this is truly an act of kismet, as you so believe, then Luffy will find a way to make you a part of his world without forcing either of you to give up your duties. This perspective was a balm to Hancock's anxious heart. The idea that Luffy could weave her into the tapestry of his epic aspirations without either of them having to forsake their individual duties or dreams allowed her to view their future in a new light. Encouraged, Hancock's mind began to explore this broader horizon. Maybe, just maybe, she could be both the Pirate Empress and Luffy's partner. Elder Nyan, sensing the shift in Hancock's attitude, decided it was time to elaborate further on the intricacies of marriage, to ensure that Hancock fully grasped its depth and commitments. Do you know why I questioned your understanding of what marriage truly involves? Nyan began, her voice firm. Hancock, a mixedness in her eyes, responded with a slight frown. Because you believe I must remain here. I know marriage is about love, and I love Luffy deeply. Nyan nodded, acknowledging Hancock's feelings but pressing on to expand her understanding. Again, love is crucial. But marriage is more than just an expression of love, it's a promise. A promise? Hancock interjected, eager to understand. Yes, Nyan continued, counting off on her fingers to emphasize each point. First, it's a promise to always be there for each other, no matter the challenges that come your way. This doesn't just mean being physically present. It means being a pillar of support, emotionally as well, during both good times and bad. Second, it's about building a life together and sharing in its joys and burdens. Marriage means weaving your dreams, your goals, and even your daily routines into a shared existence that grows and changes with both of you. Third, it will further strengthen your bond and deepen your love. Each challenge you face and overcome together, each joy you share adds layers to your relationship, making it stronger. Fourth, it shows the world how serious you are about each other. It's a declaration to your community, your friends, and your enemies that you stand united. Lastly, it's about celebrating and honoring your love. It's a commitment to continuously nurture and cherish the relationship you have, making it the bedrock upon which you build your future. Hancock's expression softened as she contemplated each point, the weight of the commitment becoming clearer to her. I see, she murmured, her tone reflective. It's not just about being together, it's about growing together and facing life as a true partnership. Exactly, Nyan affirmed, pleased with Hancock's growing comprehension. Marriage is a journey you embark on together, with mutual respect, support, and understanding at its core. With a deeper understanding now stirring within her, Hancock felt both enlightened and eager. As she stood on her balcony again, looking out over the calm seas surrounding Amazon Lily, her thoughts drifted towards Luffy, far away on Rusukaina. Her heart was full of resolve, and her mind buzzed with plans on how to embody the true partner Luffy deserved, whenever fate decided to weave their paths back together. This poignant moment of introspection marked a significant shift in Hancock's outlook, not just on her relationship with Luffy, but on her own role in the wider tapestry of the world. It was a lesson in love, patience, and the responsibilities that came with deep, binding commitments. With Nyan's words echoing in her mind, she was ready to support Luffy in a way that respected his dreams and her duties as the Empress. Little did she know, the depth of emotion and commitment she was beginning to understand would soon find its echo in Luffy's own life, in ways neither of them could have predicted. During the 2-year hiatus from his journey across the Grand Line, Luffy found himself anchored on the secluded island of Rusukaina. For a pirate who thrived in the eye of the storm, this time was an unexpected interlude of focused training. Under the vigilant eyes of Rayleigh, Luffy dedicated himself to honing his skills and pushing his abilities to new limits in preparation for challenges that lay ahead. In the midst of this rigorous training, however, an unexpected relationship began to blossom. One not merely rooted in friendship, but filled with deeper, more complex emotions that puzzled Luffy. Hancock was no stranger to attention from men, yet the only affection she truly desired seemed perpetually out of reach. Luffy was different. Her feelings for him were deep and sincere, unlike anything she had ever experienced. Despite his repeated rejections, Hancock's resolve only grew with each marriage proposal she bravely offered. For Hancock, Luffy wasn't just an exceptional man who had won her heart by chance. He was the only one who had ever truly captivated her entire being. Luffy, on the other hand, found himself at a crossroads of personal discovery. Each proposal from Hancock left him more perplexed about his own feelings. He knew he cared for Hancock, but marriage, the concept was foreign to him. However, in the midst of his training, Luffy began to wonder what Hancock really meant to him. Her proposals, once easy to brush off, started to stir a deeper contemplation about the future. As Luffy's time with Rayleigh was nearing its end, Luffy and Hancock found themselves being pulled into an unexpected adventure that tested their bond further. After a daring mission to rescue Hancock's sisters, Mari and Sonia, from the clutches of the notorious Burndy world, they were now sailing back to Rusukaina. Luffy leaned casually against the mast, his gaze fixed on Hancock, who was methodically coordinating with her crew on deck. The wind played with strands of her hair, painting the picture of a leader born to command both respect and loyalty. He watched her movements, each one deliberate and full of grace, a stark contrast to the chaos that had reigned during their recent battle. His mind wandered to the moment he had made it back onto the ship with Salome's help after he fell into the sea. Hancock had rushed to him, her relief palpable, wrapping her arms tightly around him in a hug that was more than just thankful. It was protective, warm, and unexpectedly stirring. It was a moment of pure, unguarded emotion from Hancock, and surprisingly, Luffy found himself replaying it over in his mind, the sensation of her embrace's warmth lingering on his skin. He couldn't help but feel curiosity mingled with a newfound appreciation for the comfort that her closeness provided. Luffy scratched his head, puzzled by his own reactions. It wasn't like him to dwell on such feelings, yet here he was, wondering if he might experience that kind of embrace again. It wasn't just the physical warmth, but the sense of belonging and safety that came with it. He liked it more than he expected. Taking a deep breath, Luffy pushed himself off from the mast and made his way toward Hancock, driven by a mix of impulsive bravery and genuine curiosity about his evolving feelings. As he approached, Hancock turned to greet him, noticing the slight change in his usual cheerful expression. "Luffy, dear, is everything all right?" Hancock asked, a hint of concern threading through her tone as she observed him. "Yep. Everything's great," Luffy replied, managing a smile. "I just keep thinking about that hug you gave me, it was nice." Hancock's eyes softened, a blush tinting her cheeks at the memory and Luffy's unexpected admission. "Oh, I'm glad," she said, her heart fluttering at his words. "You're always there for us, for me, Luffy, so if you ever need another one, just ask," she said quickly as the realization of what she just offered dawned on her. Luffy's smile broadened, his eyes lighting up with a mixture of relief and happiness. "Really? Can I have one now?" he asked, half joking but also quite serious, extending his arms slightly as a playful invitation. Hancock stepped forward, her heart feeling like it was going to beat out of her chest. She wrapped her arms around Luffy in a warm, sincere embrace. It was a moment of simple connection, but for Luffy, it felt like an affirmation of something deeper growing between them, something that needed further exploration. He felt a quiet certainty settle in his heart, and maybe, just maybe, he was beginning to understand what Hancock meant to him. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow over the sea, Luffy found himself wandering towards Hancock's quarters. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, mostly circling back to the warmth of Hancock's embrace. He wasn't entirely sure why he felt the need for a third hug, only that it seemed important to see her again before the night ended. As Luffy approached, Elder Nyan, along with Mari and Sonia, were outside Hancock's door, discussing the day's events and the safety protocols for the island. They looked up as Luffy's expressions turning from casual conversation to guarded caution. "Hey guys." Luffy greeted them cheerfully. "Luffy, what brings you here at this hour?" Elder Nyan asked, her tone warm but firm, already suspecting his motives might involve Hancock. "I just wanted to say goodnight to Hancock," Luffy replied, trying his best to sound casual. His gaze drifted towards the door behind them, his intention clear but his usual forthrightness slightly tempered by the unusual nature of his request. Mari and Sonia exchanged a knowing look, a mixture of amusement and slight exasperation playing across their features. "It's late, Luffy," Sonia said gently, though her eyes twinkled with mirth. "Are you sure that's all?" "Yeah, just a quick good night," Luffy insisted, scratching the back of his head. He hesitated for a moment, then added, "Maybe another quick hug, too. But, you don't have to tell her that part." Elder Nyan chuckled softly, her eyes crinkling at the edges as she regarded Luffy with a mixture of fondness and slight skepticism. "All right, Luffy, make it quick. We need our rest too, you know." Grateful, Luffy grinned broadly. "Thanks, Granny, I'll be really quick." With permission granted, Luffy stepped past the trio and knocked gently on Hancock's door. When she opened it, the surprise was evident on her face, but it quickly melted into a warm smile. "Luffy? Is everything okay? Do you need us to get you anything? Are you hungry?" Hancock asked, her voice laced with concern but also a hint of happiness at seeing him. "Everything's awesome," Luffy beamed. "I just wanted to say good night, and maybe get one more hug." Hancock's heart fluttered once again at the request. She opened the door wider, stepping aside to let him in. "Of course, Luffy. I'm glad you came." As Luffy stepped into the room, he felt a mix of relief and excitement. Hancock closed the door behind him, and they shared a quiet moment, just the two of them, where the world outside seemed to pause. The hug they shared was warm and lingering, a testament to the growing bond between them. After their hug, Luffy stepped back, but he lingered near the door, a thoughtful look crossing his face. "Actually, Hancock, I'm not really tired yet. Can I hang out here for a bit? I'm kinda hungry, too, but I do want to hang out with you." Hancock could have squealed in excitement. The thrill of having Luffy wanting to spend time with her, especially in such a casual and personal way, was more than she could have hoped for at that moment. "Of course, dear. I would love nothing more," Hancock replied, her voice bright with enthusiasm. She quickly added, "Let me get you something to eat. I have some snacks prepared. I was just about to have a little something myself." She moved gracefully to a small table in her room where various treats were laid out, fruits, some sweets, and a pot of tea, all ready to be shared. Hancock gestured for Luffy to sit at the table while she served them both, her movements fluid and filled with a quiet excitement. As they sat down, Luffy immediately started to dig in, his usual appetite in full display. Hancock watched him eat, a gentle smile on her lips, enjoying the simple pleasure of his company. Between bites, Luffy chatted about everything, stories from his training, funny incidents with the wildlife on Rusukaina, and his thoughts about what awaited him and his crew. Hancock listened intently, chiming in with her own stories from Amazon Lily, sharing insights into her life as an empress and the quirks of living surrounded by her all-female tribe. The conversation flowed easily, the initial purpose of Luffy's visit, the hug and saying good night, expanding into a meaningful exchange. As the night progressed, the room filled with laughter and shared confidences. Luffy seemed genuinely interested in her stories, asking questions and even making jokes. Hancock felt a sense of contentment she hadn't known she was missing, the presence of Luffy transforming the usual silence of her quarters into a lively, warm space. Eventually, the snacks were finished, and the tea had gone cold, but neither seemed eager to end the evening. Luffy, who had sprawled comfortably in his chair, looked over at Hancock with a contented sigh. "Hancock, thanks for letting me hang out. It's been really fun," Luffy said, his smile sincere and appreciative. Hancock's response was just as heartfelt. "Thank you, Luffy. I enjoyed it as well. You're welcome here anytime." When Luffy finally got up and reached for the door to head back to his own quarters, Hancock felt a flutter of nerves mixed with a daring impulse. She couldn't let this perfect evening end just yet, not without taking one more chance. "Luffy, wait," she called out softly, which was enough to halt him in his tracks. He turned around, his expression questioning. "If you're not tired yet, and since it's already quite late, you could stay here for the night," she suggested, her voice calm but her cheeks tinged with a blush that she couldn't control. "I mean, on the couch. It's comfortable, and you wouldn't have to walk all the way back to your quarters." Luffy blinked, surprised by the offer, but then his face lit up with his usual bright smile. "Really? That would be great. Thanks." He seemed completely oblivious to the deeper connotations of his decision, accepting her invitation with the innocence and enthusiasm that Hancock had come to cherish. As Luffy settled himself on the plush couch, arranging the cushions to his liking, Hancock's heart swelled. Her Luffy, as she fondly thought of him, would be staying in the same room as her for the whole night. The reality of the situation brought a deeper flush to her cheeks, and she found herself beaming with happiness. She busied herself with fetching an extra blanket and a pillow for him, ensuring he would be comfortable. "Here, darling, you might need these," she said as she handed him the items, her hands lightly brushing his as she did so. The simple touch sent a thrill through her, and she quickly turned away to hide her flustered smile. "Thanks, Hancock. You're the best," Luffy said cheerfully, oblivious to the emotional storm he'd stirred in her. He arranged the blanket and pillow on the couch, then settled down, looking as content as if he were on his own ship. Hancock retreated to her own bed, her eyes stealing glances towards the couch where Luffy lay. The room was quiet. The only sounds were the gentle night noises of the surrounding sea outside and the soft, steady breathing of Luffy as he relaxed into sleep. As she watched Luffy in the dim moonlight filtering through the windows, Hancock felt a deep gratitude for this unexpected, beautiful turn their relationship had taken. With a contented sigh, she finally allowed her own eyes to close, the image of Luffy, peaceful and close, escorting her into dreams filled with hope and affection. Back on Rusukaina, the rugged, wild island that served as Luffy's training ground, life quickly resumed its rigorous pace. As Hancock prepared to leave after safely delivering Luffy back from their recent adventure, an air of finality settled between them. Luffy had come to cherish Hancock's embraces during their short time together, finding comfort and reassurance in their warmth, a stark contrast to the solitude of his training. As they stood on the shore, the sound of the waves crashing in the background, Luffy turned to Hancock with a hesitant yet hopeful look. "Hancock, could I have one more hug?" he asked, his voice carrying a mixture of reluctance for her departure and a sincere desire for the comfort her presence brought. Hancock's heart leapt at the request, any formality melting away under the weight of her affection for him. "Oh, of course," she replied, as opened her arms wide. Luffy didn't hesitate, stepping into the embrace with a contented sigh. Rayleigh, watching from a distance, observed the exchange with a knowing smile. The legendary pirate had seen many things in his life, but the simple, heartfelt connection between these two was something genuine. It back to training Luffy, Rayleigh called out, his voice sounding authoritative. Impatient," Hancock murmured as she gently withdrew from the hug, her eyes locking with Luffy's. Under the guise of smoothing down his iconic vest, she discreetly slipped a transponder snail into his pocket. "Please, call me if you need anything, food, clothes, or even just a hug," she added, her voice softening with the last word. Her fingers lingered now on his hands for a moment longer than necessary. As she looked up into Luffy's earnest and intense gaze, her breath hitched. Was he looking at her with love in his eyes? I'll be waiting to hear from you," she stuttered, as she looked away from him, blushing. Luffy nodded, his usual buoyancy tempered by the upcoming solitude. "Thanks, Hancock. I'll train hard and think of you guys," he replied, a grin breaking through as he tried to lighten the mood. As Hancock turned to leave, her steps were slow, each one reluctant to widen the distance between them. Luffy watched her go, the memory of her embrace warming him against the cool sea breeze. A few weeks later, the dense jungles of Rusukaina were alive with the sounds of Luffy's rigorous training. The island, harsh and untamed, served as the perfect crucible for his preparation. As Luffy pushed himself to the limits under the watchful eye of Rayleigh, the time had come for the old pirate to leave, confident in Luffy's ability to handle the remaining challenges on his own. "I've taught you all I can for now. The rest is up to you," Rayleigh said, clapping the young pirate on the shoulder with a grin. Luffy nodded, a determined spark in his eyes. Thanks for everything, Rayleigh, I won't let you down. With those parting words, Rayleigh departed, leaving Luffy to continue his growth in solitude, surrounded by the relentless nature that was as much a teacher as the old pirate had been. Meanwhile, on Amazon Lily, Hancock was a whirlwind of activity. Despite the promise that she wouldn't see Luffy until his training was complete, she couldn't help but start preparations to visit him. Now, with Rayleigh's departure, an opportunity presented itself, one she was not going to pass up. In the privacy of her quarters, Hancock meticulously prepared packages of food and clothing, each item chosen with loving care. Her hands moved with practiced ease, but her heart fluttered with anticipation and nervous excitement. This would be the first time since Luffy's training began that she would see him without Rayleigh's watchful presence on the island. The thought of seeing Luffy again, of being able to deliver these tokens of her affection personally, gave her both joy and a pang of anxiety. Would he be happy to see her? Would he need another of her hugs? Hancock's mind buzzed with these questions as she arranged the provisions. Suddenly, her transponder snail chirped to life. Startled, she nearly dropped some food before picking up the device to answer. "Hello?" Hancock managed to say, trying to keep her voice steady knowing who was on the other end. "Hey, Hancock." Luffy's cheerful voice boomed from the other end, instantly recognizable and incredibly dear to her. "I've got a question." Hancock's heart skipped a beat, her previous nervousness morphing into elation. "Yes, dear?" she replied, a blush creeping onto her cheeks even though he couldn't see her. "So, I was talking to Rayleigh about, this stuff called a relationship," Luffy started, his voice filled with curiosity and a touch of confusion. "All the stuff that he said happens in one of those relationships made me think about some of my crew, like Zoro and Robin. Rayleigh said if Zoro does call Robin his girlfriend, then they're in that ship thing." Hancock felt her legs get weak, her mind racing at Luffy's words. The casual mention of relationships, a topic so dear and filled with personal hopes, made her feel dizzy with a mix of excitement and nerves. "He told me, it's when two people really like each other," Luffy continued, still sounding unsure but interested in getting it right. "And it also means they like spending time together a lot. That made me think of you, Hancock. 'Cause I really like spending time with you. So, does that mean we're in one of those relationship things?" Hancock's heart pounded erratically, a whirlwind of joy and disbelief swirling inside her. Luffy's innocent question, posed with such genuine simplicity, made her feel like her heart was either about to burst with happiness or stop from sheer overload. The very thought that Luffy might consider them to be in a relationship, something she had dreamed of, sent waves of excitement coursing through her. "If that's what you would like, dear, then we can certainly be in a relationship," Hancock managed to reply, her voice filled with elation and slight tremor as she struggled to maintain composure. "Really? That's great," Luffy exclaimed, his tone filled with cheer. "It sounds pretty cool. Does this mean I can have another hug and more food?" Hancock couldn't help but giggle at Luffy's straightforward excitement. "Of course, Luffy," she replied warmly. "And since we're in a relationship, that means you're the only one who gets hugs from me. You should only give your hugs to me too." There was a brief pause on the line as Luffy processed this new information. The concept seemed to resonate with him, aligning perfectly with his straightforward and loyal nature. "Okay, that makes sense," Luffy finally responded, his tone still cheerful and utterly undisturbed by the exclusivity. "You're the best at hugs, Hancock." Hancock could almost see Luffy's carefree shrug through the transponder snail, his acceptance and simplicity in handling relationships making her love him even more, if that was even possible. "Thank you, Luffy. That means a lot to me," she replied. "Yeah, and I get why Zoro and Robin were always together. This doesn't seem hard at all," Luffy added thoughtfully. Hancock laughed softly, delighted by Luffy's perspective on relationships. "Exactly, Luffy. It's about enjoying each other's company and supporting one another. I'm very happy to be in this relationship with you." "Me too, Hancock. So, when I see you next, I'll give you a really big hug. Okay?" Luffy's promise came through the snail, earnest and filled with anticipation. "I'll look forward to it, darling. Safe training, and remember, I'm just a call away if you need anything, or just want to talk," Hancock reminded him gently, reinforcing the closeness they now shared. "Got it, thanks, Hancock," Luffy replied, his tone light but sincere. As they ended the call, Hancock held the transponder snail close for a moment, her heart soaring with happiness and her mind already racing with plans for their meeting in a few days. Luffy's acceptance of their exclusive hugs and his eagerness to maintain their connection filled her with an indescribable warmth. A few days later, Luffy found himself taking a rare break, sprawled against the sturdy base of a large tree on Rusukaina. As he chewed on a piece of meat, his gaze drifted over the expansive sea, his thoughts inevitably turning to Hancock. The more he contemplated her company and the feelings she stirred in him, the less alien the idea of this marriage thing Hancock keeps talking about seemed. Observations of Zoro and Robin also played through his mind. The couple often shared gentle moments, their lips meeting in what appeared to be a mutual delight. The notion of a kiss intrigued Luffy, and he found himself wondering what such an experience would be like with Hancock. Just as Luffy was about to use the transponder snail to satisfy his curiosity and ask Hancock about it, he noticed a familiar ship cresting the horizon. It was the perfumed Yuta, unmistakable with its elegant lines and regal bearing. Instantly abandoning his initial plan to call, a wide grin spread across his face. As the ship drew closer, Luffy's excitement mounted. Without a second thought, he seized the opportunity for a dramatic entrance. Grasping two nearby trees, back and then propelled forward using his gum-gum rocket technique. On the ship, Hancock was overseeing the approach to Rusukaina, her anticipation to see Luffy growing. Suddenly, a growing speck appeared in the sky, accompanied by a familiar yell. Realization dawned on her just moments before Luffy crashed onto the deck, landing directly on top of her. The impact knocked the wind out of her, but her surprise quickly turned to joy as she found herself underneath a beaming Luffy. His arms were wrapped tightly around her in a fierce hug. Hancock's crew, accustomed to their empress's dignified composure, were initially shocked. Mouths agape, they watched as their usually untouchable leader giggled beneath the enthusiastic embrace of the infamous pirate. However, their astonishment soon turned to smiles and quiet chuckles. The crew was well aware of Hancock's feelings for the Straw Hat Captain. "Luffy, what a spectacular entrance," Hancock managed to say, her voice breathy with laughter and the residual shock of his unexpected method of arrival. "Hancock, I was just thinking about you," Luffy exclaimed, his eyes sparkling with mischief and affection, "and I was just about to call you to ask you something." "Calling might have been a bit safer, but I'm glad you're here," Hancock replied, her cheeks flushed. "What was it that you wanted to ask me?" Luffy's expression shifted to one of curiosity. "I was thinking, what's a kiss like? I've seen Zoro and Robin do it, and they like it. Can we try it?" Hancock was filled with uncontainable joy. "Why yes, Luffy, we can," she whispered, barely able to contain the elation that bubbled up inside her. In her heart, she felt like she could die happy at that very moment. However, before their lips could meet, Elder Nyan swiftly intervened, her voice stern. "Not so fast, you two. There are rules and proprieties to consider." Now up on her feet, Hancock's face turned a deep red, not with embarrassment but with irritation at the interruption. "This is not the time for your old-fashioned rules, old woman," she snapped, glaring at the former empress. The crew, sensing the brewing storm and recognizing the dangerous glint in their empress's eyes, quickly found reasons to be elsewhere on the ship, leaving the deck suspiciously empty. The ship continued its steady sail towards Rusukaina, the tension palpable in the air. Luffy, however, looked utterly confused. "What's wrong with asking about a kiss?" he questioned, genuinely puzzled by the sudden tension. "Isn't it just a thing people do?" Hancock, her anger simmering, was about to retort when Luffy draped his arm casually around her waist, a gesture he witnessed Zoro do to Robin. The simple gesture, filled with his characteristic warmth and carefreeness, melted Hancock's tension. She leaned into his touch, her anger dissolving as quickly as it had flared. It's nothing, dear," she murmured, her voice softening. Elder Nyan, watching the swift change in Hancock's demeanor, sighed and rubbed her forehead. "Young love," she muttered under her breath, a mix of exasperation and resignation in her tone. She knew better than to argue further when Luffy was involved, especially when Hancock's affections were clearly so deeply engaged. Finally she left Luffy and Hancock alone on deck to their newfound closeness. Luffy scratched the back of his head, a gesture of his uncertainty about what just transpired. He opened his mouth, possibly to ask another of his straightforward questions, but Hancock, spurred by a surge of confidence, cut him off. In a bold move that took even herself by surprise, she leaned in quickly and pressed her lips to his. Luffy's eyes widened in shock at the contact. The sensation was completely foreign yet pleasant. As they kissed, a flurry of sensations overwhelmed him. There was a sweetness in Hancock's lips, like he was tasting dessert, and a warmth that seeped into him and left him wondering why it felt so right. Hancock, realizing she had acted on impulse, pulled back after a moment, her face again a deep shade of red. Despite the clumsiness of their first kiss, there was a thrill in the act that left her heart racing. She looked at Luffy, trying to gauge his reaction, hoping she hadn't overstepped. Luffy, still processing the kiss, touched his lips with a puzzled expression, then looked at Hancock with a grin that slowly spread across his face. Hancock, that was weird. But I liked it. That tasted like dessert. He admitted, his honesty as clear as daylight. I don't really get why, but it made me feel happy. Hancock's heart fluttered at his words, the blush on her cheeks deepening. I believe it's supposed to make you feel that way, she said softly, her eyes shining. It's a way to show affection, Luffy. When people love each other, they do that. Luffy nodded, a serious look crossing his features as he took in her explanation. Oh. Wait, so can I have as many as I want? He asked with an earnestness that was entirely Luffy. Hancock felt like her heart was going to stop from the sheer joy of this moment. Why yes, oh of course. As many as you want, she nervously agreed. As they leaned in for another kiss, this time a little more prepared, the awkwardness gave way to a more comfortable exploration. Luffy learned quickly, his initial hesitance replaced by a more confident approach, one that mirrored his bold spirit. Elder Nyan peered from around the corner just to ensure everything was all right and couldn't help but smile at the sight. Shaking her head, she thought to herself, those two might just be the death of me, but at least he makes her happy. With that, she turned away, leaving them to their moment, confident that Luffy was in good hands and Hancock's heart was safe with him. Over the course of the remaining 6 months on the secluded island of Rusukaina, Hancock found herself not merely visiting but living a life that was both a dream and a revelation. While the initial plan was to simply drop off supplies and offer occasional support to Luffy during his intensive training period, the dynamic between them grew in ways neither had fully anticipated, and Hancock chose to stay longer than she had intended. Every morning, Hancock would wake before Luffy, using the quiet moments of dawn to contact Amazon Lily via transponder snail. She checked in with her sisters along with Elder Nyan, ensuring that everything was under control back home. These calls were a reassurance that the island was in capable hands, allowing her to focus on the time she was spending with Luffy. Unless a dire emergency demanded her presence, Hancock was content to remain by Luffy's side, confident in her sister's abilities to manage day-to-day affairs. During the day, Hancock took on multiple roles. She was at times a training partner, using her combat skills to push Luffy in his quest to improve his own. The intensity of their training sessions was a blend of challenge and play, with Luffy's unique abilities clashing and meshing with Hancock's own formidable power. She was also his caretaker in a way, preparing meals that were both nutritious and indulgently tasty to ensure he stayed energized and healthy. Her cooking was something Luffy grew to look forward to daily. As night fell over Rusukaina, the island's wild, untamed noises became a familiar backdrop to their evenings. Hancock found that, despite the hard ground and the rustic environment, sleeping beside Luffy brought her a peace she hadn't known she was missing. Early in their extended stay, she had tentatively suggested that they could hug even in sleep, presenting it as a curious experiment to see if it would enhance rest after a hard day's training. To her delight, Luffy was intrigued enough to try it, and it quickly became their nightly routine. Wrapped in Luffy's embrace, Hancock discovered a comfort that transcended the physical discomforts of their surroundings. His arms provided a warmth and safety that lulled her into the deepest sleep she had ever known. This period of cohabitation brought subtle changes in Luffy as well. Hancock noticed how he began to perform small, thoughtful gestures just for her, fetching fresh water before she awoke, sharing the choicest pieces of fruit, or simply offering a smile that was meant only for her. These actions spoke of a maturity in Luffy's feelings, at least when it came to how he treated her. It was a maturity that didn't extend to much else outside their relationship, but for Hancock, it was a precious development. Their relationship flourished in these months, growing deeper and more intricate. However, not all was simple or unchallenged. Hancock, unable to help herself, continued to propose marriage to Luffy every so often, each time hoping for a different answer. Luffy's responses were kind but firm, reminding her that his ultimate goal was to become the king of the pirates. This dream, vast and consuming, was something he was not ready to compromise or set aside, not even for her. Each rejection stung, leaving a bittersweet ache in Hancock's heart. On one hand, she admired his dedication and his clarity of purpose. It was one of the things that made her love him. On the other hand, she couldn't suppress the hurt that came from feeling excluded from his future, as if there was no place for her in his world of dreams and ambitions. With only a month left of Luffy's intense training regimen, the routine of their daily life on Rusukaina had taken on a bittersweet tint. It was during one of their quiet evening talks that Hancock, fueled yet again by a mix of desperation and hope, broached the subject of marriage once again. "Luffy, I really think we should get married," she said, her voice softer than usual, the vulnerability in her tone more pronounced. Luffy, who was about to enjoy some meat, paused, the familiar weight of her request settling in. He opened his mouth to respond, to remind her of his dream and his fears of commitment that might divert him from becoming the king of the pirates, but Hancock's reaction cut him off. Before he could formulate his thoughts into words, Hancock let out a heavy, frustrated sigh. She stood up abruptly and walked away, leaving Luffy staring after her, a piece of meat uncharacteristically half forgotten in his hand. Confusion etched across his face. Luffy felt an unfamiliar ache bloom in his chest. He watched her retreating figure, the sway of her long hair catching the last light of the setting sun. It was then that he realized the slight pain radiating from his heart, a sensation that surfaced every time he denied her proposal. Reflecting back, he recalled the sadness in her eyes, a constant every time he turned her down, the hope fading a little more with each rejection. Feeling a pang of guilt sharper than before, Luffy set his food down and hurried after Hancock. His steps were quick, driven by the urge to alleviate the sadness he had caused. It didn't take him long to find her. She was sitting on a fallen tree, her figure silhouetted against the twilight sky. As he approached, he noticed her shoulders shaking slightly, and the sight of tears falling stopped him in his tracks. Luffy's heart clenched at the sight of Hancock crying. He can't remember ever seeing her cry. It was a sight that underscored the depth of her distress. She was always so strong, so composed, and seeing her vulnerability displayed so openly made him realize the impact of his repeated rejections. Unsure of what to say or how to make it right, Luffy did the only thing he felt might comfort her. He moved quietly behind her and wrapped his arms around her, pulling her gently against his chest. "She likes my hugs, right? So, this should help," he thought, hoping that his embrace could somehow make up for the pain he had caused. Hancock, feeling the warmth of Luffy's arms around her, couldn't hold back a small sob. She leaned back into his chest, allowing herself a moment to just feel, to absorb the comfort he offered. Luffy, feeling her lean into him, tightened his hold slightly. Each of Hancock's sobs seemed to send a sharp pang through his chest, a pain he couldn't understand and desperately wanted to stop. He had faced many challenges and battles, but none had prepared him for the helplessness that overwhelmed him now. "I'm sorry, Hancock. I really am. You don't have to cry," Luffy murmured, his voice heavy with emotion. He felt her body tense, then relax slightly as she gathered herself to speak. "No, Luffy, I'm sorry that I cannot be what you need to be a part of your dream. I hope maybe one day I can be, and I will hold on to that hope," Hancock said, her voice tinged with a profound sadness. She then hinted at a decision that chilled Luffy to the bone. "Perhaps it's best if I call my sisters. I should leave you to finish your training in your dream." The thought of Hancock leaving, of her not being by his side, triggered an intense spike of pain in Luffy's chest, more than before. Instinctively, he tightened his grip, preventing her from rising. "No, don't go, please," Luffy pleaded, his voice urgent. "When you talk about leaving, it hurts here," he said, pressing a hand against his chest. "It makes this weird pain worse. I don't understand it, but I don't want you to go." Hancock paused, her heart catching at his words. She recognized the pain he described, It was a deep, aching pain she had felt herself when she thought she might never see him again almost 2 years ago now. Could it be possible? Did Luffy love her in the same way she loved him? "Luffy, do you know what this pain might mean?" she asked gently, turning to face him, her tear-filled eyes searching his. "It's the kind of pain that comes from deep care, from love. It's what I felt when I first realized how much I cared about you and loved you." Luffy looked at her, confusion gradually giving way to a dawning realization. The battles, the laughter, the shared meals, and the quiet moments. They all flashed through his mind. Hancock had become more than just a friend. She was someone he couldn't imagine his life without. "Love?" he mumbled, the word feeling strange yet fitting. "Yes, Luffy, love," Hancock affirmed softly, a hopeful smile touching her lips. "And if you feel this pain at the thought of me leaving, then maybe I love you." Luffy finished her sentence, the realization coming to him with surprisingly clarity. He looked into Hancock's eyes, trying to grasp the full weight of what this meant as he scratched the back of his head. After a few quiet minutes, during which the only sounds were the gentle rustle of the trees and the distant calls of nocturnal animals, something seemed to click in Luffy's mind. He looked at Hancock with realization dawning in his eyes. "Is that why you keep asking to marry me?" he asked, his voice carrying a new understanding. All Hancock could do was nod, her heart swelling with hope as she saw the pieces falling into place in Luffy's mind. They fell back into a comfortable silence, now sitting side by side under the canopy of stars. Luffy kept one arm around Hancock, holding her close. He was quiet, clearly wrestling with his thoughts, how to reconcile his lifelong dream of becoming the king of the pirates with the new, unexpected dream of a life shared with Hancock. He pondered how to prevent her tears and alleviate the pain that now seemed so closely tied to her happiness. Meanwhile, Hancock's mind raced through her own turmoil and realizations. Finally, a thought struck her, a potential solution that might bridge their dreams. For once, she actually felt gratitude towards Elder Nyan for taking the time to explain this concept to her. Hancock turned to Luffy, her voice low and thoughtful. "Luffy, you know, it's possible to have more than one dream," she suggested gently. Luffy tilted his head, his interest piqued. He had never considered the possibility. His path had always been singularly focused on one goal. "More than one dream?" he repeated, the concept novel and intriguing. "Yes," Hancock continued, her voice earnest. "You don't have to choose between being the king of the pirates and being with someone you love. Both can be part of your ling. A great pirate isn't diminished by having someone by your side. If anything, it might make you stronger, having someone to support you, to fight with you and for you." Luffy considered her words, the idea slowly taking root. The notion that he could weave his aspirations with his affections. That his journey could include Hancock not just as a companion but as a partner, seemed right. "Do you really think so?" Luffy asked, the idea beginning to brighten his expression, a spark of excitement lighting up his features. "I do," Hancock affirmed, her voice firm with conviction. "So, I can still be king of the pirates and marry you?" Luffy asked, seeking further clarification as he mulled over Hancock's suggestion. His voice carried a hint of hope, mixed with the need to understand fully what combining these different aspects of his life would entail. Hancock nodded, her eyes brightening at his question. "Yes, Luffy. You can do both. Being king of the pirates is about overcoming challenges and being the freest person on the seas. Being married to someone who loves you and whom you love can be part of that freedom and strength," she explained, her voice filled with warmth and conviction. Luffy paused, letting the information sink in. He looked thoughtful, a rarity when it wasn't about adventures. "But why is it so important for us to get married?" he finally asked, genuinely curious about the significance of this commitment in Hancock's eyes. Hancock didn't hesitate. She had thought about this many times after her conversation with Elder Nyan, hoping for a chance to share her feelings and beliefs with Luffy. "Well, marriage is more than just a ceremony or a title. It's a promise," she began, counting off on her fingers to emphasize her points. "First, it's a promise to always be there for each other, no matter what challenges come our way. It's about building a life together, sharing the joys and the burdens. It strengthens the bond between two people who love each other. Second, it's a way to show the world how serious we are about each other. It's a declaration of our commitment, not just to ourselves but to our friends, our family, and even to our enemies. It lets everyone know that we stand together, that we're a team. Third, it brings security, emotional and sometimes even physical. Knowing you have someone who is permanently in your corner can give you peace of mind and heart. Lastly, it's about love, Luffy. Celebrating our love, honoring it, and making it the foundation of our life together. It's the ultimate adventure, one that lasts a lifetime. Luffy listened intently, each reason resonating with him more than he expected. Marriage, in Hancock's view, wasn't just a traditional formality but a profound partnership, a mutual commitment that enriched life's journey. He tapped his finger on his chin, considering all she had said, the implications of such a commitment weaving through his thoughts. So, getting married. It's like a really cool and strong pirate alliance? Luffy asked, trying to put it in terms he understood best. Hancock laughed softly, delighted by his analogy. Yes, exactly like that. An alliance of hearts and lives, she agreed, reaching out to squeeze his hand. Luffy smiled, his usual bright, carefree grin returning as he processed Hancock's explanations. An alliance of hearts, huh? That sounds pretty cool, he mused aloud, his eyes sparkling with a mixture of excitement and newfound determination. Hancock's heart soared at his words, her own smile mirroring his. So, does this mean you'll think about it? Really think about it? She asked, a hopeful note in her voice. Luffy nodded, his decision firming as he spoke. Yeah, I'll think about it, but, Hancock? His expression turned unexpectedly serious, a look that Hancock had seldom seen on his usually carefree face. The shift caught her off guard, her heart skipping a beat in anticipation of his next words. Luffy continued, his tone reflective, if we do this marriage thing, you have to sail with me, right? How are you going to protect Amazon Lily if you're with me? Hancock was taken aback by Luffy's consideration of her duties and life beyond their relationship. His maturity in this moment revealed a depth that was rarely witnessed so plainly. You're thinking very far ahead, my love, she said, her voice filled with a mixture of pride and affection. It's true, my sisters and my people need me, however, I could still be the Empress of Amazon Lily and your wife. We can find a balance. Luffy's brows furrowed slightly as he processed her words, trying to think of a solution that could accommodate both their lives. Hancock giggled to herself, finding his look of thought adorable. We can make plans that respect both our commitments at a later time, Hancock gently stated as she fought to stifle a yawn. Luffy caught the slight opening of her mouth and the hurried way she covered it with her hand. Without a second thought, he scooped her up in his arms, bridal style, causing her to let out a surprised squeak. Luffy. You're getting tired, Hancock, Luffy remarked with a grin, noting how her cheeks flushed a deep shade of red at his spontaneous act. It's time for us to hug while we sleep, right? His innocent voice, coupled with the term, hug, for cuddling, made her smile. Hancock soon relaxed into his embrace as her arms wrapped around his neck. Yes, I suppose it is, she managed to say, her voice a whisper against the backdrop of the evening's quiet. The night was peaceful, and as they reached their camp, Luffy gently laid Hancock down on their makeshift bed of leaves and blankets. Settling next to her, Luffy wrapped his arms around Hancock, pulling her close into a protective, comforting embrace. Hancock nestled into the curve of his body, her earlier fatigue melting away in the warmth of his hold. Her last conscious thought before drifting into sleep was how natural it felt to be there, wrapped in Luffy's embrace, and how eagerly she looked forward to a future filled with more of these moments. A few days later, the island of Rusukaina was bathed in the gentle light of early morning as Hancock was getting ready for her return to Amazon Lily to prepare for their wedding. Her heart was a tumult of emotions, excitement, nervousness, and a profound sense of anticipation. She couldn't help but replay the conversation that had changed everything. It had been a typical evening, with the sun setting over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the beach where Luffy and Hancock were sitting side by side. So, I keep thinking about that marriage thing, Luffy started, his tone casual but sincere. I think it sounds fun, let's do it. Hancock turned to him, her eyes wide with a mixture of joy and caution. Luffy, I'm so happy to hear you say that, but I need to ensure you really understand what this means. Do you truly know what we're about to do? Luffy looked out at the sea, thinking for a moment before turning back to her, his eyes clear. To me, getting married means I get to be with you all the time. I mean, I know I'll be with my crew a lot, and you'll be with your people, but you're still here. he stated confidently as he gestured to his heart. "It's like we're friends, but better, 'cause I love you. I know it's love. You make me happy, and I want to make you happy too." Tears welled up in Hancock's eyes as Luffy's simple but heartfelt words washed over her. With a joyful giggle, she leaned forward, cupping his face in her hands, and pressed her lips to his in a tender kiss. Luffy, surprised at first, soon reciprocated with equal warmth. As they parted, Luffy let out his characteristic laugh, his eyes twinkling with affection. "You get so happy when we talk about this," he noted, his amusement endearing. Hancock, utterly overwhelmed by happiness, felt as though her heart would once again stop. "Yes, Luffy, because I love you, and I cannot wait to marry you." Now, as Hancock stared at her soon-to-be husband from the bottom of her ship's gangplank, she felt the echo of that kiss linger wry enough to sustain her through the upcoming preparations. She was about to organize a wedding that would unite her life with the man she loved, a man who was, against all odds, ready to embrace a future with her. Hancock lingered on the shore, not wanting to leave as her gaze locked with Luffy's, both of them soaking in the final moments before her departure. She moved towards him, not wanting to leave without one final goodbye. Luffy watched her approach with his head tilted, his usual grin widening with a spark of mischief and tenderness. He could tell she wanted a hug and opened his arms, an invitation she eagerly accepted. Hancock moved into his embrace, wrapping her arms around him tightly. Without a word, Luffy leaned in, his lips meeting Hancock's in a tender kiss that spoke volumes. As they parted, Luffy's eyes held a newfound softness. "I'll be right here waiting for you, Hancock." Hancock nodded, her lips curving into a brave smile as she fought the tide of emotions threatening to spill over. With one last hug, she turned and walked towards the perfume Yuta. Climbing aboard, she gave Luffy one final glance over her shoulder, her heart full of love and longing. Luffy stood there, his silhouette framed against the vast ocean, waving until she was out of sight. On the perfume Yuta, as the island disappeared from view, Hancock's thoughts lingered on Luffy's final words. It was hard to believe that everything she had ever gone through would lead her to such a man. Despite the trials she and her sister had endured, fate had woven a path that led to something genuinely beautiful. Hancock looked forward to the day she and Luffy would unite their lives officially, cherishing the promise of shared adventures and a love that had become her greatest treasure.